On this episode of Business Access, Paula Llewellyn shares her story about being the first female to bear the privilege and responsibility of being the Director of Public Prosecutions of Jamaica, an office that is the hallmark of service above self.
There is no room in terms of success for it to be underpinned by anything other than competence.
DPP Llewellyn also underscores the importance of adhering to good management practices and having no choice but to be utterly competent, a trait that has earned her the respect of her peers and the Jamaican people.
I'm Paula Llewellyn, Queen's Counsel, Director of Public Prosecutions for Jamaica. Paula Llewellyn is a committed Jamaican who believes in service above self. And I have chosen to make a contribution, and my country has also selected me to give that service as a prosecuting attorney. And I have been so engaged for the last 31 years. I am one of two. My sister is Diane Llewellyn-Nicholson. She's a nurse abroad. And we were born to Mavis and Clinton Llewellyn. I was born at the Victoria Jubilee Hospital. So as my friends tease me, my friends who were born in rural Jamaica tease me I was born under the clock. But I was born in a household where the good old-fashioned rural values and attitudes and Christianity was very, very important. And at the center of all that, the work ethic. For example, when I was in sixth form at St. Hugh's High School, and I said to my father, "Daddy, I'm now 18, it's time for me to learn to drive on this old Morris Oxford." And he said, "When you can learn to wash the car, then you can learn to drive." So the work ethic was always extremely important to both parents. My mother was a nurse, my father was a real estate agent, but they celebrated above all their good rural value system where work, and more work was really the great provider for what would facilitate any success in life. And of course, my mother, like her mother before her, was a great prayer warrior. So she would say that so long as you have God there in the vessel, you can smile at a storm, and nobody, she would say, nobody can disturb your peace. Well, I was a rather ugly child. I used to wear these awful thick cat-eye glasses, can you imagine? From age 6, 7, and this went up to about 11 when I took the common entrance. But I was an ugly child, all pimply faced, very, very skinny, and quite shy. My great love was reading. And although I considered myself to be a very unattractive child, and others said so too, I used to get a lot of teasing. Nobody could beat me when it came to vocabulary and reading and being able to articulate when I chose to speak. But otherwise, I was a little bit on the shy side. I passed my common entrance and went to St. Hugh's High School. I went to St. George's Girls Primary School on Duke Street. My mother believed in going to a good church school. So St. George's was an Anglican school, and St. Hugh's was also an Anglican school. And after about second form, the great sense of humor that I'm known for started to assert itself. And I also loved drama from primary school days. I used to be in festival with a drama group. So I think the love of reading, that voracious appetite, and being somewhat of a frustrated actress started to reassert itself after it merged. And I started coming out of myself to the point that everybody knew I loved to talk. So by third form, that reputation was cemented, much to the what should I say, my teachers being a little disconcerted. But I did perform academically, so they didn't mind too much. And I love to smile. I love to laugh. I love a good joke. And I don't have a problem with being the butt of a good joke. I'll be the first one to laugh with you. I had so loved reading that I thought I wanted to be a librarian, because I thought surely with all those books I'd have more than enough to keep me occupied. And then by about third, fourth form, I started to think about something else. And I settled on law as being a good combination of the love of reading, the love of articulating, the love of English language, the love of literature, and also the fact that I'm a frustrated actress. So I knew I wanted to be an advocate, and the great path to that as a career would have been a legal career. This was 1979 approximately. You go to sixth form, and then I was accepted into law. At that time, the class was quite small compared to what you have now. And we were a small bunch, so we became very, very close. And you had perhaps 50-50 men and women, or young men and young women. And gender was not an issue. Everybody was beating book, because you know that you had to get good grades to get in, and you know that you had to get good grades and maintain them so that you are able to matriculate at the desired level. So gender was not an issue. In fact, it's so funny, several of my classmates would remind me that I used to say to them, just think of me as a brain, in between laughing, because at that time I had an excellent figure. So although I was such an ugly child, somewhere along the line in late teenage years, I told my mother it must be her genes. I had a very good figure, but I still wore glasses, a little bit more attractive, but you love to dance, which I did, or you love to go to the beach in your bikini, and sometimes the guys would just tease you and say, "Oh, Paula, nice figure." I said, "Just think of me as a brain," right? Well, that was just a joke. But we enjoyed our time at university. I enjoyed it. I would like to think that I did well academically, but I also believed in doing extracurricular activities. So I was involved in student government in the law faculty, and I found time to go and watch football, to take part in sports day, to also be chairperson, I remember, of the Jamaica Night Organizing Committee when I was in Barbados. And one great thing that we had to do, in addition to fostering, love of Jamaica and being an exemplar of what is good about Jamaica, was that we had this Jamaica Night Fete that we had to organize. And we had a fantastic time, but it was very stressful organizing it. To this day, my class, the Norman Manley Law School graduating class of 1984, we are quite close. I am aware that prior to my being appointed to the post, you have never really had a female DPP. In fact, there was a time that there was a restriction on how many women would be allowed to join the office of the DPP. I have been privileged in my 31 years as a prosecuting attorney to have appeared against leading Queen's Counsel, leading senior counsel, and to have actually conducted prosecutions in many critical cases that helped to change the legal landscape. For example, I appeared in the first case that really showcased DNA technology. We used it and we were able to get a guilty plea at the end of the Crown's case. A case out of Montego Bay, the Queen against Bernard Chang, which involved the murder of a bank manager who coincidentally her parents happened to come to my church. I didn't even know. And I was up against Mr. Howard Hamilton, Queen's Counsel. I remember the case of the Queen against Mary Lynch, which was like Jamaica's O.J. Simpson case. And that was another very, very, very well-known case, but it took a lot. It was a classic circumstantial evidence case, and in my career, I have done quite a few circumstantial evidence cases. For example, the one that I just completed, the Queen against Michael McLean, that 6-count murder case out of St. Thomas, which involved the murder of 4 children and 2 adults. So I have been privileged to have appeared in many, many cases. I am aware that prior to my being appointed to the post, you have never really had a female DPP. In fact, there was a time that there was a restriction on how many women would be allowed to join the office of the DPP. And I was told by persons, both male and female, older than me, who went through, that usually it was at a time no more than 3 women. Now, women far outnumber the men. Presently, I have about 51 lawyers, and only about maybe 11 of them would be men. Everybody else is of the female gender. But it has been a journey, and it was not an easy journey because there is no room in terms of success for it to be underpinned by anything other than competence and an excellent work ethic. Long nights, early hours of the morning, weekends in terms of your preparation. And when you are in court appearing against guys like Frank Fix, Queen's Counsel, K.D. Knight, Queen's Counsel, Church and Nita, Queen's Counsel, Lord Anthony Gifford, Queen's Counsel, Earl Witter, Queen's Counsel, Adrian Nicholson, Queen's Counsel, there is no room to be other than competent. And you have to be able to take your licks as you learn to give them too. The police will tell you, don't watch the smile. I'm still dangerous behind the smile. What I have tried to bring to bear on my office is to create an environment where I say to my staff, I want you, I will encourage you to outshine me, the director. So they are comfortable to outshine the director. And that helps to stimulate in them not only the confidence that I will be there as the wind beneath their wings to develop holistically and to be the best that they can be, but it also reflects well on the entity so that when we are going through the challenges in some of these difficult cases, we are there together as Team DPP. We celebrate each other's success. And that is why, for example, when we had security risks, when we had to deal with the extradition of Dudus, we dealt with it as a family. When we were prosecuting a Vibes cartel, I was the one who collected a death threat. But it didn't even occur to me to pause. I had to be there for my staff, making sure that everybody was all right. So when I see where, for example, last year, 8 members of my senior staff were selected for promotion to the bench, that reflects on my stewardship. I had to release them, and I was very happy for them, but I consider myself an astute manager. So once somebody tells me that they have applied to go there, I have a pretty good idea that they'll be accepted, so I start to look for replacements. So managerial astuteness in the 21st century, for me, is critical. But also what is critical as a leader is being able to motivate your staff. Too many managers, perhaps because they are suffering from some insecurity, are not mentally or emotionally able to provide the atmosphere that their subordinates feel, that I can be encouraged to outshine my manager and be applauded for it. And if only managers would know and understand that that is how you and your entity will get the reflected glory from your member of staff who is striving for the stars. That is how you build a successful and confident entity. So that when you step away, whether you're on leave or you have to go abroad on a business meeting, that entity is throbbing and striving as an entity with committed, motivated individuals outside of your presence. And if that is so, that's a great thing. But very often, because a lot of people, sometimes, especially striving to be managers, are deep down insecure because they may have some chip on their shoulder or some childhood issue. I tell you, I used to be shy, you know. I used to think that I was one of the ugliest children. But you have to bloom where you're planted, and you have to be able to confront and recognize your flaws and your weaknesses and work on it. I think it is important in a system like the justice system to have a lot of well-trained people who are not only giving service above self within their legal remit, but the science of management, I think, will be very important so that you understand how to deal efficiently with the resources that you have. I would say I came from a fairly humble beginning. I mean, my parents were both from a very, very humble rural community. My mother joined that big migration to England and did nursing there, and then she came back. She was in charge of the Hyacinth Lightman Visiting Nursing Service. My father was a man, I call him the village lawyer, which perhaps is where I get my flamboyance from. He believes he knows everything about everything, right? So he can cook on the stove in the kitchen, and he can roast breadfruit on the cold stove. So through him, you learn a lot of flexibility, whereas my mother was very proper. So I think I was blessed to have had those values instilled in me in terms of what it means to work, what it means to do without until you can work, to provide for yourself. My mother was very strong on that. You know, my parents were strong on you not looking on other people's things and coveting it. You learn to do without until you, by dint of your own work and your sacrifice, can provide for yourself. So I appreciate the accolades. I am gratified by the recognition. But I'll be frank with you, I don't allow myself to be detained by them. You can't get caught up in your own hype. And you must never overlook the simple things that help to enhance the quality of your daily discourse and how you interact with people. It's not the power that you wield, but it's how it affects the people that you serve. Apart from some of the great cases that I have appeared in and some of the great advocates that I have appeared against, I would have to say the single most defining moment is when I was appointed as DPP, because for the first time, it was a competitive process. Hitherto, it was a situation where the Prime Minister, in consultation with the Leader of the Opposition, would advise the Governor General that this particular person has been selected. But when I became DPP, it was from a process where I had to compete with 5 other people in an interviewing situation, which also involved a management module that you had to do. And after that, I was appointed. And that probably was perhaps the greatest moment of my career. Jamaica is not as bad off as some people would have you believe. Most of the Caribbean countries are having a crime issue. It's part and parcel of the fact that we no longer have any borders. We are in the internet age, and transnational crime and its spin-offs, it's everywhere. So Jamaica is still not doing as badly as some people would think. In terms of our rule of law and our legal systems, they are strong, and they are doing, to my mind, very well in terms of holding that strength. When you hear people used to talk about Jamaica in crisis and failed state, I said to myself, what the dickens are these people talking about? You ever go and see what is happening in places like in Syria and Yemen? You ever turn on your cable TV or any news media and see what is happening in some parts of the world? When you travel, you see Jamaica is still in a good place. We have to come to grips with the crime, but coming to grips with the crime it cannot be done by waving a magic wand. And I find too often commentators excuse the public too readily. Members of a community know about the gunmen in their midst, and they say nothing. Yet still they expect the police now, through telepathy, to know. So very often people want, but they are not prepared to take on the responsibility to do anything other than be armchair cricketers. And when they are to step up to the plate and to take that bat to go into the middle, to strike some runs for justice, they refuse to do it. They prefer to go back into the stands and clasp their hands on their veranda and then turn around and say, what is the police doing? What is the DPP doing? What is the Minister of National Security or the Commissioner doing? It's everybody's problem. But thank God, you have a lot of committed people in the system. Of course, there is a lot of room for improvement, both in terms of resource allocation and in terms of certain administrative aspects. There's room to enhance operational efficiencies in the administration of justice and in national security. But it doesn't mean that the work that a lot of committed individuals are doing should be diminished. It just means that it should be encouraged, and we need to have more of that commitment and more smart resource allocation and resource use by the stakeholders in the system. But I am very proud to be a Jamaican, and I believe that there is a lot that we have in this country to be thankful for. And I'm looking forward to more positivity. I am not a negative person. So if you're coming to me to speak pure negativity, you're not going to get a listening ear. Or I will listen out of respect for you, but I am committed to be positive, notwithstanding the challenges. I would like to see more training in terms of management. Gone are the days when stakeholders in the justice system could just come to the table with simply experience in your legal competencies and the legal field. What I'd like to see is an equal emphasis on management training for those of the persons who will be managers in the system. I was fortunate, which was another big turning point in my life, that when I was a deputy director of public prosecutions, I benefited from having gone on this course, a senior public sector executive management course at Mind. It really woke me up to how important the science of management is, and appreciating the science of management when you are going to be a manager in any entity. So I would like to see that spread out right throughout the system in terms of people at a mid-management or senior management team. And I think that would also help to make a great difference, because at the end of the day, Jamaica has challenges economically. We are not a superpower. We are, though we're little and we're talawa, little but talawa, we still have to be very, very careful in terms of how we spend the resources that we have. So I think it is important in a system like the justice system to have a lot of well-trained people who are not only giving service above self within their legal remit, but the science of management, I think, will be very important, so that you understand how to deal efficiently with the resources that you have, how to turn your hand, make fashion, and how to speak the language of the bureaucrats to be able to get, as best as possible, a little bit more of the pie to do even more in service of the country when it comes to the justice system. For me, wealth has to incorporate your peace of mind, what it means to be able, the kind of mental toughness to maintain your integrity, good health, and perhaps being able to cover all my bills, which thank God, I'm able to do, and also to assist my daughter as she goes through her university education. If you are looking for material wealth, then being a public servant is not the place for you. So it has to be a vocation and just a desire to give service above self.